Have you ever wondered why you always seem to attract the same type of relationship? Whether it's a pattern of emotionally unavailable partners, toxic relationships, or repetitive cycles of pain and frustration, the answer may lie within you, or rather, in your unconscious. Carl Jung teaches us that much of our life is guided by unconscious forces. Our relationship patterns are not mere coincidences. They reflect unresolved internal dynamics originating in our deep psyche. Often, without realizing it, we repeat family stories, unconsciously seek healing for past wounds, or project onto our partners parts of ourselves that we haven't yet recognized. This script will explore, in the light of Jung's analytical psychology, how the unconscious shapes our relationships and why we seem to be stuck in certain patterns. We'll talk about psychological projection, the role of the shadow and archetypes, and how individuation, the process of integrating the self, can help us transform our love life. The problem is not with others, but with what we haven't yet recognized within ourselves. If we want to change our relationships, we first need to look inwards. Carl Jung teaches us that the unconscious is a vast and powerful field, full of repressed contents, traumas, and archetypes that shape our perception of reality. When we talk about repetitive relationship patterns, we are dealing directly with two fundamental concepts of analytical psychology: projection and shadow. Psychological projection occurs when we attribute aspects of ourselves to others that we don't recognize or accept. This means that often, what attracts or irritates us in a partner reflects something internal. If you always get involved with emotionally unavailable people, for example, there may be an unconscious fear of intimacy within you. You may even want a healthy relationship, but if you carry deep beliefs about not being worthy of love or fear, another crucial factor is the shadow, which Jung describes as the repressed part of our psyche, everything we deny or reject in ourselves. Many of our love choices are influenced by the unconscious need to integrate the shadow. If we have been taught to repress anger, for example, we may be attracted to aggressive partners because they manifest outwardly what we refuse to acknowledge within ourselves. In addition, our childhood experiences shape our expectations of love. Early relationships, especially with our parents or caregivers, establish an emotional template that we carry into adulthood. If we grew up in an environment where love was conditional or unstable, we may unconsciously seek to recreate this dynamic, as it is familiar to us. The question is, how do we break this cycle? How do we break out of this unconscious repetition and create a new relationship pattern? The answer lies in individuation, the process of becoming self-aware and integrating the repressed parts of the psyche. To understand how these patterns manifest themselves, let's look at some practical examples. Imagine a woman called Anna, who always gets involved with emotionally unavailable men. She is attracted to partners who at first seem charming, but over time become distant and evasive. Anna feels rejected and anxious, wondering why she always ends up in relationships like this. Investigating her history, Anna realizes that, as a child, her father was affectionate at times, but emotionally cold and absent at others. Unconsciously, she learned that love is something unstable that needs to be earned. So she repeats this pattern in adulthood, seeking approval from partners who recreate the same dynamics as her childhood. Another example is Marcos, a man who constantly attracts controlling and critical women. He feels suffocated in his relationships and ends up pulling away, reinforcing the cycle of conflict. Reflecting on his childhood, Marcos realizes that his mother was extremely demanding and controlling. His psyche associated love with this kind of dynamic, and, without realizing it, he continues to attract partners who recreate this scenario. These patterns are not accidental. They are unconscious attempts to resolve past wounds. Our psyche seeks to integrate unresolved experiences, and one of the ways it does this is by projecting these issues onto relationships. But how do we break this cycle? The first step is to become aware of the pattern. Ask yourself, what are the common characteristics in my relationships? What feelings do they arouse? Are there any similarities with my childhood or past experiences? The second step is to integrate the shadow. If you attract emotionally unavailable partners, ask yourself, am I also afraid of intimacy? If you always get involved with controlling people, is there a part of you that fears making your own decisions? Recognizing these hidden aspects allows you to step out of the victim role and take control of your emotional journey. Carl Jung said that individuation is the path to wholeness, that is, to becoming who we really are, free from the unconscious influences that imprison us. When it comes to relationships, individuation means recognizing our patterns, integrating our shadow, and learning to consciously choose who we want by our side. Often, we look for something in others that we lack. Jung called this the anima and animus, the archetypes of the feminine and masculine within the psyche. On an unconscious level, we project these energies onto our partners, hoping that they will fill internal gaps. If a woman has not integrated her animus, her masculine side, she may seek out men who represent this energy, often in an unbalanced way, attracting authoritarian or domineering partners. In the same way, a man who hasn't integrated his anima may be attracted to women who express his repressed sensitivity, but over time he may resent this emotional dependence. Another relevant concept is that of the collective unconscious. Many of our romantic behaviors come from cultural and family patterns that we inherit without question. Love stories, myths, and fairy tales shape our expectations about relationships. If we grow up believing that true love involves sacrifice and suffering, we can find ourselves repeatedly in painful relationships without realizing that this is just an internalized narrative. So how do we transform these patterns? 1. Self-knowledge. The first step is to look inwards. Writing a diary about your relationships, seeking therapy, or practicing self-observation can help identify unconscious patterns. 2. Integrating the shadow. Instead of running away from the aspects of your personality that you reject, recognize them. If you always attract critical partners, ask yourself, is there a part of me that is also critical? 3. Conscious choice. With more clarity about your patterns, you can choose partners in a healthier way without acting on autopilot. Breaking unconscious patterns takes courage, but it's the only way to build authentic relationships free from repeating the past. Relationships are not merely external events in our lives. They are mirrors of our psyche, reflections of our inner journey. Repeating the same love patterns is not a punishment from fate, but an invitation to transformation. Each partner we attract reveals something about ourselves, our wounds, our fears, and, above all, our potential for healing. By becoming aware that our relationships are guided by unconscious forces, we free ourselves from the role of victim and take control of our own story. Instead of looking to others for the solution to our pain, we learn to integrate our shadows, recognize our projections, and become complete beings. When this happens, we stop needing a relationship to save us and start building connections based on authenticity and mutual growth. Real change happens when we stop asking, why do I always attract the same type of relationship? And start asking ourselves, what is this pattern trying to teach me? The answer lies within you. Conscious love begins the moment you decide to truly know yourself. And as you become whole, you will naturally attract relationships that reflect this new version of yourself.